Let's get right into today's explainer. I want you to just picture your typical morning for a second. You wake up, grab that first cup of coffee, maybe check the notifications on your phone, and head out for another day of work. And there's something incredibly comforting about that routine, right? You've got your daily plan and this general unspoken sense that the world is just going to keep spinning exactly like it did yesterday, even if that just means sitting through another completely boring status meeting. But what if I told you that all that comfortable predictability you're projecting into your future is actually a dangerous illusion? We're not talking about some gradual, predictable shift here. If we look at the analysis from thinker Yuval Noah Harari, the fundamental rules of the game we call modern life are about to change so radically that the world you know today is going to become completely unrecognizable. Seriously, ask yourself, where do you actually see yourself in 5 years? You probably got professional goals mapped out, right? Maybe a promotion, paying down the mortgage, eventually saving up for retirement. You're making all these plans based on assumptions about how the world works right now. But Harari's warning us that those exact assumptions might become entirely obsolete, literally overnight. To really grasp the magnitude of this, you have to think about the sheer velocity of human progress. The agriculture revolution, that took millennia to fully unfold. The Industrial Revolution took centuries or at least many decades. But this revolution, the AI and biotech one, it's happening in mere years. AI is evolving millions of times faster than human biology. We literally only have a matter of years to brace for this. Part 1. The illusion of stability. Okay, let's dive right into this. You see, humanity has this incredibly consistent habit of completely misjudging the eve of massive change. Think about hunter-gatherers 15,000 years ago. They couldn't even imagine the agricultural revolution was about to completely rewrite the rules of human survival. Or medieval peasants. They couldn't conceive of the Industrial Revolution radically changing what it means to be an individual with economic value. In every single case, people desperately clung to the idea that things would just return to normal. But as this quote perfectly captures, normal simply ceased to exist. It was replaced by a new normal that the previous generation couldn't even fathom. Which brings us to part 2, the 2030 cognitive threshold. Harari, along with a ton of AI experts, is pointing to one very specific dividing line in human history, 2030. Just let that number sit with you for a second. 2030. This is not the year 3000. It's not some distant, abstract sci-fi future. It's only a few years away. If you're 30 today, you'll only be 36 when this hits. 40? You'll be 46. You are likely going to be in the absolute prime of your professional life, maybe with kids in school, building your career, when this rupture completely upends the board. So, what exactly happens at this 2030 threshold? It's the moment AI crosses a massive line. We're not just talking about sophisticated calculators anymore. We're talking about AI demonstrating general cognitive capabilities that either rival or flat out surpass ours. We aren't just crunching numbers. We're talking about genuine creativity. We're already seeing AI systems inventing new medical drugs and mastering insane strategy games in hours. For the very first time in human history, human intelligence will simply no longer be the gold standard on this planet. Moving to part 3, the end of human work. So what does this actually mean for those career plans you were just making? Well, this brilliantly illustrates the terrifying cascade we're looking at. During the Industrial Revolution, machines replaced our muscles. But we adapted, right? Because we still had our minds to rely on. But this next revolution, it is a totally different beast. If AI replaces our minds and becomes better at complex decision-making, retraining simply is not an option. Like, if a truck driver loses his job today, maybe he learns to code. But what happens when the AI is a better programmer than the human? Suddenly, we have nowhere left to migrate. It's absolutely crucial to understand that we are not just talking about automating manual labor on an assembly line anymore. Think about programmers, teachers, doctors, lawyers, artists, scientific researchers. At some point in this cascade of replacements, AI just becomes better than us at virtually everything that carries measurable economic value. The obsolescence of employment is coming for the most sophisticated roles in our entire society. For thousands of years, humans had something totally unique to offer. The mind was our absolute last fortress of economic relevance. But right now, that fortress is crumbling. The very foundation of our modern identity, this idea that we derive value through our work, is fundamentally dissolving. And it's happening on a timescale that just doesn't give society enough time to gradually adapt. And that leads us to part 4, the new biological divide. Because as terrifying as the end of work is, Harari warns that the next shockwave hits something way deeper, our actual biology. We are staring down the potential emergence of biological castes. Imagine a society divided not just by who has more money or political power, but by fundamental, engineered biological capabilities. We're talking about humanity literally splitting into groups that are biologically superior and biologically inferior. Right around that same 2030 mark, biotechnology and genetic engineering are on a collision course with AI. We're looking at a future where an elite class can just go out and purchase literal upgrades, cognitive enhancements, radical life extension, direct brain-computer integration that links their minds straight to AI, genetic code editing. So while the vast majority of humanity might find themselves economically irrelevant, a tiny elite could completely transcend our traditional biological limits.
Which forces a really massive existential question on all of us. Throughout history, we humans have always been the main characters, right? All our religions, our political ideologies, our social structures, they all rely on this basic premise that humans are special and indispensable. But if a machine can create more profoundly moving art, or an AI can show more consistent empathy and make wiser ethical decisions than we can, where exactly does our supposed moral and emotional superiority actually lie? It completely shatters our fundamental understanding of what it even means to be human.
Part 5. The Crisis of Institutions. Let's zoom all the way out to the macro level for a minute, because right now the world is facing a totally critical mismatch. Look at how technology moves. It advances exponentially, doubling in power rapidly, totally ignoring national borders. Meanwhile, look at our human institutions, our governments and regulatory bodies. They evolve linearly. They're bureaucratic, they're slow, and they're entirely bound by geography. So the crucial point here is that this widening gap between lightning-fast tech and super slow social adaptation is what's going to force some incredibly chaotic, disorganized adjustments on all of us. There's actually a profound irony in how we're living right now. Just think about the education system. Today, we are still educating kids primarily to memorize information and develop very specific skills, using curricula built for an industrial world that is literally disappearing. But by 2030, AI will have instant access to all human knowledge, and it'll acquire new skills vastly faster than we ever could. We are literally raising our children for a world that simply won't exist by the time they're adults. And who's actually steering this ship? This right here is the massive governance gap. A handful of unelected tech CEOs out in Silicon Valley and their engineering teams are making decisions right now that will shape the future of humanity way more profoundly than any international treaty ever could. They're operating without any democratic mandate, they're driven by market imperatives rather than human well-being, and governments are totally overwhelmed, desperately playing catch-up with technologies they barely even understand. Which brings us to a final lingering thought drawn directly from Harari's analysis. As we inevitably merge with this technology, as brain-computer interfaces start to blur the line between your authentic human emotions and technologically induced thoughts, we really have to ask, if you modify your biology and your cognition so radically through technology, are you still you? The illusion of stability has broken, guys. Now humanity has to decide exactly what it's going to become.